Hello and welcome everyone to our 2021-2022 Student Member of the Board Finalist Q&A session. My name is Samantha Warfel and I am this year's Baltimore County Student Council's president. I'm so excited to be here moderating this Q&A alongside our current student member of the board.
Hello everyone, my name is Josh Mahamza and I'm this year's student board member. In today's SMOB Q&A, each candidate will be asked questions from the many that we received earlier. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. It's my pleasure to introduce each candidate. Logan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks so much for having us here today, and it's great to be able to answer all these questions and speak with the students. My name is Logan Duble. I am a junior at Franklin High School in Wrighterstown, and it's great to be here.
Thank you. My name is Christian Thomas, the other SMOB finalist this year, and I am a junior at Eastern Tech, and that is located in Essex.
The first question will be asked to Logan. Logan, if the pandemic is an ongoing problem, how will you be responsible for making sure that students' concern is brought to the board with regards to transportation and safety?
Safety across the board as we begin to open our schools after at this point, a year away is paramount, and we've got to make sure that students feel comfortable. As we go back, socialization is definitely one of our priorities, but safety also must be our top priority. We've got to make sure that wearing masks is something that is enforced everywhere. We've seen time and time again that that is something that is supported by the science and will slow the spread of COVID-19. So we definitely have to make sure that when students are concerned or think that their school environment is not safe, we've got to make sure that there are open channels of communication for them to make their voices heard. Because again, education is our priority, and that is why we are making this decision to allow children to go back to school.
Thank you. Christian?
Thank you.
Thank you. And so I think that right now, as we're approaching hybrid learning, a lot of our students are going back to school thinking that everything is going to be the same, thinking that we're going to have socialization and an increased amount of intercommunication between students. However, we need to ensure that our administrators and teachers for each school are actually enforcing the guidelines that are set in place by the Board of Ed right now, actually enforcing the CDC guidelines, ensuring that our hallways are one-way streets, ensuring that within the classroom, those desks are as far apart as they can be, ensuring that when students are getting transported to school, that we have those blockades on seats, enabling students to sit far apart on our buses. I think that safety is the #1 priority, and it's really up to making sure that we're holding our school administrators and teachers accountable, because students are going to want to congregate. Students are going to be hard to get us all not in this abiding by those guidelines and those 6 feet distancings. But it's important that our teachers are the ones and administrators who are really enforcing those. And that's what I would be advocating for on the Board of Ed.
Thank you both. Our next question will be given to Christian first. And that question is briefly explain a current effort of the Board of Education surrounding curriculum or programs and give your stance on the topic.
Awesome. I think that one of the most recent things is the BCPS inter-county sports issue that's going on and enabling students to participate in sports with spectators in competitive games. And my stance is completely for the decreased amount of spectators, but the increased number of sports and activities that are enabling students to explore their passions in sports. I love that right now there was a resolution passed enabling students to have those competitive games. And I'm so excited to see how students are able to interact with sports in our school system. So that's like the program that I support fully.
Thank you. Logan?
Yeah, so I think a current effort that is really being taken up by the Baltimore County Board of Education surrounding curriculum is to make sure that our schools are creating a world-class education that not only prepares you to be a successful student and academic, but prepares you to really go into life and be successful. We've got to make sure that when we say college and career ready, we're also emphasizing life ready. And I think that's a great thing that I would definitely champion on the Board of Education, really taking a hard look at all of the courses we're offering, everything that we're teaching in our classrooms every day, and asking ourselves if it is applicable, not just the skills, but the work ethic that we're gaining and all the experience that we're gaining every single day, making sure that is preparing us for a life that we choose to live regardless of what path we take.
Thank you. The next question will go to Logan first. People often say that school does not prepare students for real life. What would you do or implement to encourage real world preparedness within BCPS students?
That's a great question, and I definitely empathize with that. I think I'm one of those people who has said that in the past. So I think step one is just to recognize that that is something students are feeling, and really tell the Board of Education. Just because students are thinking something, we've got to make sure that we're never making assumptions about what students are really believing, and making sure that we're advocating on their behalf. So step one is just recognizing and speaking the truth on that topic. Then I really think we need to take a very close and comprehensive look at all of our curriculums for each course, and really evaluate what students are taking out of those classes, what they're retaining, and why it matters in the real world. If we can't come up with a reason why something is important for any student, regardless of what career path they take in the real world, then we shouldn't be emphasizing that in our curriculum. So definitely just making sure that we're taking a close look and asking ourselves if this curriculum looks like the 2021 modern world.
Thank you. Christian?
I think that we really need to prioritize not necessarily those college and career readiness programs, but also some of those trade programs within BCPS. We have so many diverse students all across our county, and not every single student is going onto a college track. Many students are just looking to get past high school and then graduate from there. And so I think we need to increase the number of magnet courses and just trade programs in general that are enabling students to focus on cosmetology or culinary or other trade programs that are allowing them to have certifications and jobs right out of high school. I love that we have such a college and career readiness focus, and I think that should continue to expand so students have, a life advantage in the world. But really, the vast majority of our students are not going to college, and so I think that we need to make sure that we're preparing them as well.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Christian first. How are you going to fully ensure that students are given an inclusive curriculum that addresses all backgrounds?
This is so great. I think that the first thing to do is, like Logan mentioned before, communicate with students. I know from my personal experiences, I have seen a lack of multiracial and LGBTQ plus protagonists in our books. I've seen a lack of LGBTQ plus students in our history textbooks. But I was recently talking to another student, and they were talking about the lack of religious diversity in our stories, the lack of religious identities that are being reflected. And so it really comes down to recognizing and talking to students to figure out, where are we missing? Whose story is not being told in the current stance? And then from there, taking those and all of the curriculum committee meetings that I'd be a part of, and just representing those voices and sharing them. I was attending a curriculum committee a few days ago, and they talked about this book called The Hate You Give, and possibly adding it to the student curriculum. And that is one example of a book that would be more racially inclusive. And so it's really about doing research with those books and working with the curriculum center to see how we can inclusify and diversify our curriculum.
Thank you. Logan?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with what Christian said. We definitely have to make sure that our curriculum does look like and represent all 115,000 diverse students that attend Baltimore County Public Schools. There's no other way to put it. We definitely have to make sure that the curriculum looks like and feels like Baltimore County and the rest of America. We have an amazing group of students that bring so many different backgrounds and stories with them. We've got to make sure that the education they're getting in the classroom every day reflects the life and the world that they're living in. So I totally agree with that. And specifically, I want to point out our history classes. I think that over time, we've definitely done a good job, specifically in American history, of recognizing that not everything is just sunshine and rainbows. And yes, we have our faults. So we've got to make sure that we're not erasing our stories, but we're recognizing where we went wrong and how we've learned from that, and really showing that we can learn from history and make sure that every one of our faults that we recognize in the past won't happen again. And I think that's the beauty of telling our stories in an honest but inclusive way.
Thank you, Logan. Our next question will go to Logan first. Many students within the Baltimore County public school system frequently experience technological issues and or do not have a functional BCPS issued device, which may not allow for them to gain a complete equal learning experience with like other students. As student member of the board, how do you plan to advocate and enact change for students who are at a disadvantage due to technological issues that may prohibit them from fully engaging in virtual or even hybrid classes?
That's a great question, and it's so honest about the situation that many students are facing. I've been a student in the past who hasn't had a BCPS issued device that was working correctly and prevented me from taking a standardized test at the time and just really getting things to work. So I totally empathize with that situation, and it's even more paramount right now that we make sure our devices are working in this virtual learning environment. As student member of the Board of Education, I would make sure that our IT department is fully equipped and ready to handle the amount of devices and students that we currently have. Because right now, if you look to get a help ticket issued or look to get your device fixed, you're talking about weeks and sometimes months for answers. So we've really got to make sure that, especially right now, when your education is on this computer, that you need to have a computer that works, is functional, and that all your applications and everything allows you to have the same equal education that everyone else in your class might be having. So we've just got to make sure that our staff and our departments are equipped and ready to handle such a great volume of tech issues and tech problems so that really we're fixing these issues as much as we can.
Christian?
Awesome. I don't think the issue actually comes from a lack of equipment or lack of resources available. I think the real issue in regards to the digital divide that exists is the lack of communication. You know, the other day, my brother was with his dad in Pennsylvania, and he didn't have an ability to communicate with BCPS, and his device shut down for 2 weeks. Well, the same thing happened to a friend of mine who was unable to get in contact with their school's counselor, with their school's secretarial office, and actually discuss the issues with their device. You know, students don't know that there are help decades. They don't know that there are phone numbers to call. They don't know that we can be reaching out to people who actually fix their devices. And instead, what happens is virtual learning is a lot of students just their devices are break and they just aren't doing anything. And so what's important is that we have our communication increased. We have our teachers and our staff and our peers that are really pushing to enable people to understand that there are resources available for your devices to be fixed, and that we're enabling that communication because the resources are there. The devices are within our school building at this very moment. Some students just don't know that they can be reaching out and getting that assistance.
Okay, this question will now be directed at Christian. A major focus of both of your campaigns is making sure that students have equal access to resources, no matter their economic background. How do you plan to make sure that students have equal access to technology and are given the resources needed to support them, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think it begins, like before, with that communication, with realizing and understanding and looking at the logistics to see which student populations are not getting the resources and are not participating in their classes because they might not have access to Wi-Fi. And then once finding those resources, ensuring that we are reaching out to those direct students directly. We can see who's not participating in Google Meet classes right now. We can see which students aren't present and engaged. And we should be reaching out to them and really ensuring that they are heard and that they feel like we have an army of tech people behind them who want to support them. But that's not happening. It's not happening because there's just that lack of communication. And so it begins with, if I was elected SMOB, establishing communication within each of our schools and establishing a communications team to have students talking and using their voice collectively to discuss where those disparities are present.
Thank you. Logan?
Yeah, we definitely need a communications team, but we also need a team that is willing to not only put information out there, but go directly to the students and ask them questions, not just wait for the students to come to them. Like we've said, there are so many great resources in BCPS, but it's about not making assumptions and really asking the students the tough questions and making sure that they feel as if BCPS really relies and counts on them for that information. So we've got to always go to the students, not wait for them to come to us. I definitely think with making our experiences equal, we've got to take a hard look at, again, as Christian said, who's being affected by this. We've got to make sure that across the board, students feel as though when we make these major decisions that regard technology, that we're really looking out for them. And I think I would definitely look to make both our magnet programs and our college support programs more equitable and have greater access to them at schools. It's not just about being more vocal, but it's about beefing up our resources at schools to make sure that when students need that help, they can have it and it will be just as great as someone else's resource that comes from outside of school.
Thank you. This next question is for Logan. How will you address the toll that virtual learning has taken on mental health?
Mental health is extremely important. I think we've really learned that over the last year. Some people who may have been skeptical of all the talk that we've had about really stopping the stigma against the real mental health, what is the real epidemic that I think is facing every American teen right now, or almost all across the country. And we've really got to recognize that people who may have been skeptical before now realize how important putting a focus and emphasis on your mental health is. It affects every single aspect of your life. So I think we've got to have a K through 12 big, wide ranging initiative that really puts an emphasis on making sure that your students and your teachers are looking out for the students, doing frequent check-ins, making sure that students have real resources at schools, but not, again, not that the resources are there, but that the resources, the guidance counselors are reaching out to the students themselves. We don't want people here to help that you only go to in the worst of situations. We've got to show students that even if they think their issue is extremely small, that it matters and that it's important.
Thank you. Christian?
Yes, Logan, I completely agree with everything you just said. And to kind of expand on that, I think it's important that a lot of our counseling offices have an exact focus on mental health. I really want to see the counseling offices in BCPS kind of become reinvented, where there's two counselors maybe focusing on college preparedness and two others that are really focusing on mental health, with either being a social worker or a psychologist. I think that, like Logan said, the resources are there, but they're just not talked about. Our students aren't reaching out to actually take hold of those resources. And so it comes down to student leaders all throughout BCPS sharing those resources in different academic clubs or in different sports programs. It also comes down to recognizing that the toll of mental health has also made this work-home life balance completely diminish all throughout BCPS. And so it's important for us to open up more opportunities for students to be taking a break from these screens. I'm advocating for this development of a wellness weekend or a pause day, so that students are forced to take a break and maybe reflect on the quarter they've had, or reflect on any of the things that they've been missing, or missing assignments they might have, or things that they've been missing in classes, and really just taking a break from the strict school on a screen and then going to play video games on a screen, or any other thing that students might do, and we're requiring them to take a break from that sector.
Thank you. Our next question will again go to Christian first, and it is, how will you address bullying, stereotyping, and discrimination in BCPS schools? And how would you advise people who are facing those problems to address them?
Firstly, I think it's important to answer the second part of your question. To advise any student who's facing bullying or hateful or discrimination in our school system, we need to be reaching out to our school counseling offices. We need to be reaching out to trusted teachers and adults. I think that that's the first thing, and I want to use this platform to stress that every student, if you're facing any issues, reach out to those resources that are available. Reach out to the Baltimore County Student Council's resources on their Linktree. And then to address to decrease the amount of such, I'm really an advocate for zero tolerance policies for hate speech and hateful discrimination on every capacity throughout BCPS. I know that right now there are a lot of things going on within the Board of Ed and the Maryland General Assembly focusing on those issues. And if SMOB, I would continue to advocate for those and continue to push for those policies so that all of our spaces in BCPS feel more inclusive and safe.
Logan?
Yeah, I definitely think we should have a zero tolerance policy, but I think a lot of these policies actually exist. The problem is that we're not enforcing them and showing students that they really will be held accountable for actions that really diminish and hurt the lives of so many of their fellow students right now, especially as the world continues to be virtual and everything happens online. We've got to make sure that our schools have the ability to have some authority of what goes on online and is directed towards students. While things that happen online may be outside of schools, they are affecting students and their actions taken by students against other students. So we've got to make sure that schools have the ability and the authority and the power to protect their students both in person and online. So we've got to hold our teachers, hold our students, our administrators accountable to a lot of the rules and regulations that already exist. But again, showing students that none of this is acceptable, especially as we are in this really modern time of 2021.
This next question is for Logan. What are your solutions to dismantle the current systems that perpetuate the inequalities within our school system?
I think, again, a lot of the inequalities that exist in our school system, not only are they socioeconomic, but they're, again, based on a lot of communication. In terms of specific actions that I would take to bridge that communication divide, is once again reaching out to people before they reach out to me or other BCPS leaders. It's important that we're going directly to our people before they even come to us with problems. We've got to try to solve problems before they even exist. So that's something that I think is important as we reach out to the communities that have been previously underserved. Next thing is specifically with the socioeconomic divide, we've got to provide the same resources at schools to students, such as standardized test prep, college counselors, mental health assistants, that other people may be able to get outside of school at a cost that is just not possible for a lot of other students in BCPS. So really making our schools more than just places where students are learning, but places where they can thrive in their communities.
Christian?
Thank you. I think that the first way to do this is to really understand like the socioeconomic issues that are occurring when it comes to extracurricular activities and after school activities. Right now, a lot of our students who want to pursue the college route or who are planning to try to get involved in school aren't able to actually do so because they don't have transportation after school to get anywhere or to go back to their home school. And so I would love to fight for an activity bus implementation throughout BCPS so that students are able to travel from their home school or their zone school to any other school in the BCPS county after the school is let out, and this bus would assist all those students in that way. And I think that another reason to address this is, like Logan said, increasing that amount of communication. I think that in order to address the disparities present, we need to educate everyone about the disparities that do exist. And that begins by educating some of our teachers about some of the different things. Holding a multi-day professional development activity with teachers, discussing directly, not just using the blanket term equity, but addressing addressing the different issues that exactly exist within our county, addressing racial discrimination, addressing LGBTQ+ discrimination, addressing hate speech, and really having these open conversations without those blanket terms that really make everything seem less intense when these issues are very intense.
Thank you, Christian. And I want to thank you both for your thoughtful responses this far. For our last question today, we have a BCSC favorite, which is the wacky personality question. Just so all of the students that are watching right now can feel like they can get to know you a little bit better. So, Christian, this will again go to you first, but the question we have for you both today is there any activity or club that if you had the time, you would like to start just for fun?
Ooh, okay. I think that I would love to start just for fun a club that I actually had before in my middle school, and that was a recorder club. So I know that the recorders are an instrument we've all played in the past, but this club really internalized with me. It allowed me to begin to explore what extracurricular activities were in general. It allowed me to invest in my education. And so I want to create a club that maybe just it would be recorder focused for myself, but a club that allows everyone to kind of have an independent project they're working on, rather than to increase the amount of younger students and get them engaged. I think that was a little weirdly worded, but really it would be a club that would have a bunch of students having independent projects that are engaging other students and engaging younger students in those activities, because a recorder club for me was what kind of led me on this track to now being a SMOB finalist.
Thank you. Logan?
Well, I can't say this is necessarily wacky, but I think something that's really important is, like Christian said, allowing students to go along their own route is creating an initiative that allows students to really become and serve as their own best advocates. We have talked a lot today about communication and the importance of really opening up channels for students and giving them an outlet to amplify all of their important messages and let them resonate throughout Baltimore County. So I really would love to, as SMOB, create an opportunity for students to really become leaders and always rely first on themselves to get their message out there, and just be reminded that they should never back down and that they always have a place in Baltimore County to share their message and hold those in power accountable.
Thank you so much to Logan and Christian, our two SMOB finalists, for joining us today for this super important Q&A session. We hope that you all learned something new about our candidates today, and have been able to grasp their stances on important issues that face us as students. Be sure to vote on March 17th using the QR code that will be provided at the end of this video on the screen. Thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day.